Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. It's 1914, and the world is occupied with something called the Great War. Since nobody knew there would be a sequel just yet, they didn't call it World War One. That would happen later. So anyway, a guy out of Austria-Hungary by the name of Adolf Hitler decided that he wanted to get in on the action. Even though he didn't want to be in the army of his home country, he was pretty happy when the German Empire entered the war in August of 1914, so he could join up with the German army. See, Hitler was always into German stuff like German architecture, Wagner operas, and other things, so being able to serve in the army of what he considered the best country in the world was his dream come true. He saw active service in France and Belgium as a messenger, and he was exposed to a lot of enemy fire. In 1916, he was wounded in the leg, but he returned to the front in 1917. He wasn't afraid to fight. It's dangerous to think of bad guys like Hitler as cowards, because usually they aren't. That's how they go on to become bigger bad guys, as we'll see. Hitler was actually cited twice for bravery in action, getting the Iron Cross Second Class in 1915 and the Iron Cross First Class in 1918. This was a pretty big thing for a corporal to get an Iron Cross. It was usually an honor reserved for officers of higher rank. Hitler couldn't get higher than corporal, though, because he wasn't a German citizen yet. In a bit of historic irony, as is always the case, the commanding officer who recommended Hitler for the Iron Cross was Jewish. Well, no good deed goes unpunished, I guess. Overall, Hitler's comrades thought of him as uptight. He was a good enough soldier, but he was pretty sanctimonious and thought the blind obedience was what life was all about. Still, he wasn't a one-trick pony. He drew cartoons and instructional drawings for the army newspaper. The war had started to turn against Germany when the German army lost its initiative due to stalled offensives and mounting Allied victories. The whole thing eventually came to an end in 1918 when an armistice was signed. Germany had been hit pretty hard by a series of mutinies and revolutions at home, like Russia had a few years earlier. Workers and regular people were tired of the war and wanted Germany to get out. The German government signed the armistice and later Treaty of Versailles as much to keep the country from falling apart from internal craziness as anything else. It would probably come as a surprise to most people these days to find out that contrary to popular belief, the German Empire wasn't really defeated in the standard sense. Nobody marched into Berlin or any other big German cities to conquer the country. Armies of Americans didn't roll across the German countryside kicking ass and taking names. Nothing like that. Basically all that happened was the German army left the areas of Europe that it had taken over during the war and went home. Because the German army hadn't been invaded and defeated as a country, a lot of Germans looked at this like Germany hadn't really been beaten at all. To a German-phile like Hitler, the idea that the country of his dreams could suddenly fail was crazy. He was admitted to a field hospital for temporary blindness caused by a poison gas attack, but there's a theory that Hitler's blindness may have come from his hysteria over Germany's defeat. Who was responsible for this defeat? Hitler didn't take long to jump on a bandwagon that was already gaining momentum. The surrender was the fault of civilian politicians. Those guys weren't in the army, so of course they wouldn't understand. He felt liberal politicians had stabbed the German army in the back by fostering unrest at home and then surrendering. Well, Hitler decided right then and there that the purpose of his life was to save Germany. Things didn't quite work out when he instead caused the deaths of millions and brought Germany to ruin. Okay, guys.